The people most dependent on government aren't the poor. They're the rich. But before I explain that, bear with me for a second, because it starts with a pyramid. You probably encountered Maslow's hierarchy of needs at some point. Psychology 101 maybe? The basic idea is that human beings address needs in a sequence. Survival first, then safety, then belonging, then esteem, then something called self-actualization. The full realization of your potential. It's a model of human motivation. But it's also, if you look at it in the right way, a map of civic engagement. Think about what it takes to participate meaningfully in a democracy. You need to stay informed. You need to understand policy well enough to connect it to your own life. You need the time, the energy, and frankly, the mental bandwidth to think beyond today. Now think about someone at the base of that pyramid. Someone whose daily existence is organized around survival, food, shelter, physical safety. When you are operating at that level, not voting isn't a character flaw, it's a consequence. The pyramid doesn't let you skip levels. Move up. The middle levels, working people, lower middle class, people whose basic needs are mostly met, but who are still navigating economic precarity and social belonging, this is where political engagement becomes more visible. But it also becomes more vulnerable, because this is the level where identity-based appeals are most effective. Enough bandwidth to engage, but engagement gets routed through tribe, through culture, through the feeling of being seen or threatened, rather than through any clear sense of what the system is actually doing to their lives. This is a lot of where voting against your interests conversation actually lives. And Maslow helps explain why, because belonging needs are real needs, and political messaging that speaks to them works. Now, the top. Self-actualization, material security, comfort. And here's where it gets interesting. Because this is where civic engagement often disappears again, but for a completely different reason. Not because people can't engage, because they've concluded they don't need to. Policy feels abstract. Government feels distant. They've built something. They've made it. The system feels optional. Background noise, rather than load-bearing infrastructure. And that feeling has a name. Dare I say it? It's privilege. And here's what that feeling gets wrong. Civic society doesn't just redistribute wealth, it redistributes power. Law enforcement, contracts, courts, property rights. These don't just protect the weak from the strong, they restructure who has power at all. The person who built a software empire, who accumulated generational wealth, who sits on top of the pyramid, they don't just hold that position through physical dominance. They hold it because contracts are enforceable, because courts function, because the deed, the portfolio, the accumulated paper wealth, all of it, only holds value because the system backs it up. Remove the system and it's just paper, and paper doesn't stop anything. In a world where might makes right, where the system that enforces paper wealth simply stops functioning, the map of who holds power would look nothing like it does today. The skills, the connections, the accumulated advantage that made you wealthy in a functioning society do not automatically transfer to chaos. And here's the part that almost nobody says out loud. Vulnerability to collapse isn't equal. It isn't even close. It is in direct proportion to your distance from the floor. The further you are from the floor, the further you fall, and the bigger a target you become on the way down. The people nearest the bottom of that pyramid, they experience the least marginal disruption. They're already operating with minimal system dependence. They have less to lose and less that anyone's coming for. The collapse of institutional power doesn't flip their world. They were already close to the floor. This isn't a new insight. Smart, wealthy people have understood it for generations. Joseph Kennedy, father of John F. Kennedy, and hardly a bleeding heart, was appointed by FDR as the first chairman of the SEC. The logic was the same reason you hire a former hacker to run your cybersecurity. He knew exactly where the bodies were buried. And during the Depression, at the height of economic collapse and social unrest, Kennedy said it plainly. In those days, I felt and said I would be willing to part with half of what I had if I could be sure of keeping, under law and order, the other half. That's not altruism. That's a man doing cold arithmetic. Protect the system because the system protects you. That understanding, enlightened self-interest, is what kept wealthy elites invested in making the system work for enough people. Not because they were generous, because they were rational. A system that works for enough people is a system that stays standing. And if you happen to sit at the top of it, keeping it standing is the smartest investment you can make. But that rationality requires something. It requires being able to imagine the floor. It requires understanding that the system is fragile, that you can't extract indefinitely without consequence. And that understanding erodes, not through malice, necessarily, through insulation, through consequence-free overreach, compounding over time until the floor becomes literally unimaginable. That's hubris, not just arrogance, but the specific blindness that comes from never having been punished for overreach. And when the wealthy lose interest in making the system work for enough people, or worse, use their influence to ensure that it doesn't, something shifts in the people at the bottom and middle of the pyramid. More and more of them reach a threshold, a point where they have no stake in the system's survival. And you start to see it in voting behavior, in the willingness to support candidates who treat the system itself as the enemy. That's not ignorance. That's the system sending a signal. And it's a signal the people who most need to read it have lost the ability to receive. There's a critical mass of people at every level of that pyramid, a minority within each level, who can see past their immediate position, who understand the system as a system, who vote with some awareness of what they actually stand to lose. That coalition is what holds democratic function together. It's thin, it's fragile, and it's under pressure from every direction simultaneously. When the people at the top of the pyramid abandon that understanding, when they stop seeing the scaffolding and start seeing only open sky, they don't just expose themselves. They thin the coalition that holds the whole thing up. If the people at the bottom can't engage because survival won't allow it, and the people in the middle are too busy fighting each other over tribal lines to see what's actually happening, and the people at the top have confused the scaffolding holding them up for open sky, then who exactly is left to sound the alarm? There is someone, a minority at every level, who can still see the system for what it is, who understand what's actually at stake. But that group has been shrinking. And the question isn't who's left to sound the alarm. The question is whether there are too few and too late.